A tariff is a tax on a foreign country. That's the way it is, whether you like it or not. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's a tax on us. No. It's a tax on a foreign country.
As he did on the campaign trail, President Donald Trump continues to falsely claim or suggest that tariffs on imports will be paid by other countries and not American consumers. Just before higher tariffs on goods imported from dozens of countries went into effect on August 7th, Trump said on Truth Social that, quote, billions of dollars, largely from countries that have taken advantage of the United States for many years, laughing all the way, will start flowing into the USA, unquote. He's wrong. Foreign businesses could decide to, quote, lower their prices to absorb some of the tariffs, unquote, as the Tax Foundation explains. But importers in the U.S. pay the tariffs in the form of customs duties, which are collected at ports of entry by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Then, at least some of those increased costs, according to economists, are often passed on to U.S. consumers in the form of higher prices on items. Because of this, tariffs are considered to be regressive taxes, affecting lower-income households more than others as a percentage of income. Before and after he took office in January, Trump has made a series of false and misleading statements to justify his new tariff policies. Read a recap of the claims we fact-checked at our website, factcheck.org.
Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse.
In declaring a, quote, crime emergency, unquote, in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump wrongly claimed that the murder rate in the city, quote, reached the highest rate probably ever, unquote, in 2023. He also ignored a decline in murders since then. Trump made the claim in justifying a federal takeover of the city's law enforcement. Washington's murder rate did increase in 2023 to the highest rate in 20 years, but it wasn't the highest ever, and murders have decreased since then. Jeff Asher, a co-founder of Age Datalytics, a data consulting firm that produces an aggregation of crime data provided by law enforcement agencies around the country, told us Trump's claim about murders hitting an all-time high in Washington, quote, is not accurate, unquote. Asher, a former CIA analyst, told us the city's 2023 murder rate was 39 per 100,000 population, the highest since 2003. He said via email, quote, that was still down more than 50% from 1991's murder rate of more than 80 per 100K when the city had 482 murders. It has also since fallen and is on pace with 2019's pace so far in 2025, unquote. Get the full story at factcheck.org.
But we have a $40 billion deficit with Switzerland. That's a big deficit.
To justify a new high tariff on imported Swiss goods, President Donald Trump has exaggerated the U.S. trade deficit with Switzerland by ignoring a trade surplus the U.S. has in services. The overall goods and services deficit is less than $9 billion. It's an omission he makes in other claims about trade imbalances with other countries. On August 7th, new tariffs went into effect on imports from dozens of countries, including a 39% tariff rate on goods coming from Switzerland. An executive order by Trump said the rates were for U.S. trading partners who didn't, quote, sufficiently address imbalances in our trading relationship, unquote, among other factors. The U.S. goods trade deficit with Switzerland in 2024 was $38.3 billion, while the U.S. services trade surplus with Switzerland was $29.7 billion, according to data from the Office of the United States Trade Representative. That's a total goods and services deficit of about $8.6 billion, not $40 billion as Trump claimed. Jonathan Dingle, an associate professor of economics at Columbia University, told us that the trade deficit with Switzerland, quote, is in line with the broader multilateral pattern. The United States runs a goods trade deficit and a services trade surplus, unquote. Get the full story at factcheck.org.
You go back, and they came out with numbers that were very favorable to Kamala, okay, to trying to get trying to get her elected. And then on the 15th of November or thereabouts, they had an 800,000 or 900,000 overstatement reduction right after the election.
In explaining why he fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, President Donald Trump has offered this timeline on past BLS announcements that he claims were an attempt to aid Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris in the election. But his timeline is wrong. A month before the election, the BLS jobs announcement on October 4th showed growth of 254,000 jobs for September, but, quote, days before the election, unquote, as Trump put it, the BLS announcement on November 1st showed weak growth of 12,000 jobs in October. BLS also said the August and September figures were revised downward by 112,000. The Trump campaign at the time said the jobs report was, quote, a catastrophe, unquote, that showed how Harris, quote, broke our economy, unquote. A month after the election, the October figure was revised upward. As for Trump's reference to an 800,000 or 900,000 reduction, in late August 2024, well before the election, BLS announced a preliminary estimate that the number of jobs created over the 12 months ending in March 2024 would be adjusted downward by 818,000. The announcement was part of a routine annual revision. The final estimate and adjustment, announced in February, was a downward revision of 589,000 jobs. Get the full story at factcheck.org.
I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election, and there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her.
There is no evidence to support President Donald Trump's claim that the Bureau of Labor Statistics employment estimates are phony, or as he said in a social media post, quote, rigged, unquote. Hours after the BLS released data showing slow job growth for July and prior months, Trump fired the BLS commissioner. BLS produces statistical data on employment, wages, inflation, and more, and its work has long been viewed as nonpartisan. Its monthly job estimates, based on a survey of about 121,000 employers, are routinely revised as more data are collected. Kathy Utgoff, a former BLS commissioner who was appointed by President George W. Bush, told us that commissioners, quote, can't rig the numbers. The commissioner has no ability to change the numbers that come out of computers at the last minute, unquote. The administration hasn't produced any evidence for Trump's claims. The White House has pointed to BLS revisions to job numbers, but that's not evidence of any manipulation. Utgoff told us, quote, revisions are not mistakes, they are improvements, unquote. Get the full story at factcheck.org.
There was a shift, a 180-degree shift from the intelligence community's assessment leading up to the election to the one that President Obama directed be produced after Donald Trump won the election that completely contradicted those assessments that had come previously.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's claim is misleading. Gabbard has said she uncovered, quote, overwhelming evidence, unquote, that former President Barack Obama and others in his administration manipulated intelligence to, quote, lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, unquote. Her claim relies heavily on an alleged contradiction between a January 6, 2017 intelligence assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin had ordered a, quote, influence campaign, unquote, in an attempt to help elect Donald Trump, and earlier intelligence assessments that concluded Russia did not successfully use cyber attacks on election infrastructure in the 2016 election. But those two assessments are not in contradiction. Democratic Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, put it this way in a July 21st X post.
No one ever claimed Russia altered votes, but everyone claims that Russia tried to interfere on Trump's behalf.
Several subsequent and exhaustive reports, including then Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller's 2019 report, supported the findings about a Russian influence campaign contained in the IC's January 6, 2017 assessment. Get the full story at factcheck.org.